Good morning. Welcome to the Breakup. I hope you're all doing well this morning. Sun is up, I noticed. I checked. Bitcoin's running. We can have our coffee, talk about the news. A lot happening, I noticed. So normally I do a lot of the writing for the show, which is really just collecting stories that I enjoy and sharing them with you, and then putting that Bitcoin filter on, because that's the point of the show, right? The point of the show is not so much talking people into buying Bitcoin or giving reasons why you should buy Bitcoin. It's the other side of the trade. It's why you should sell dollars, right? And the show's all about that psychological space of the future of the dollar, the confidence it inspires, contrasted with the future of Bitcoin and the confidence it inspires. So all we're doing is contrasting how people make dollars and how people make Bitcoin. It's two different worlds. So that's the point of the show. And today we're going to be talking a lot about the brain, because that's really what this show is about. It's about the psychology around these commodities. So we have a theme today, but we're going to get to it in a second. We're just going to share some news stories, and then they will lead into the theme of the day. So the first one I have is the Happy Birthday, Mr. President. So it's Vladimir Putin's birthday. And it looks like they created this, birthday present is what they're calling it. They blew up a major bridge in the Russian-controlled part of Ukraine, in Crimea. And this bridge connected it to the mainland. It was a big feature of Russian occupation since 2014. They had built this land bridge, and it was a symbol of their generosity towards that part of Ukraine. So, and as mean as, or as funny as you can, we got to try and find some humor in this. So as mean and funny as the Ukrainian government tends to be on social media, someone sent a picture of the bridge blowing up, cut alongside the Marilyn Monroe birthday song, where she sings "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" to JFK. So it's the bridge burning and the attack, and then her singing. pretty tough stuff. So happy birthday, Mr. President. A lot of talk this morning as well about how the bridge was broken down, how the bridge was attacked. I have no proof at all of any of this, but people are sharing pictures on Twitter. Never trust anything on Twitter. People saying, was it a car bomb? Was it a truck bomb? How did they get the thing on fire? Someone is proposing that it was a water drone, that a water drone went under the bridge and then blew it up from underneath. So we don't know on this show. We're going to pay attention to it, find out what happened, but we're only mentioning it because on this show we predict that drones are absolutely the future of war, and all of these other things, tools of war, are way less important, except for the hypersonic missiles and anything coming from space, right? So basically, war is now space plus drones on Earth. Every other thing is gone. Just my theory. We're waiting to see it play out, but that's what I believe. In other news, what was the other big story that I wanted to cover this morning? Oh yeah, it was, so yesterday Biden tweeted and something about we're never been so close to nuclear apocalypse. That's why with this bridge, it's one of those cases as well that we're a little closer to pushing Putin in a corner where maybe he does fire back, right? So I don't know the answer. We're all going on, cost-benefit analysis basically right now, how much we can risk. I think it's a little risky to keep provoking him in a corner. I continue to predict the Russian military will collapse, but somehow he's going to stay in power. If that's not the case, if they really are going for the full kill shot, get rid of him, you open us up to risks of nuclear retaliation, because what else is he supposed to do? I'm a proponent of off-ramps, is what I guess I'm saying. But that doesn't seem to be fully unanimous as a point of view, and I might be wrong. So I'm not saying that pushing him into a corner isn't the better thing. I'm just saying that's what I would prefer to do. So not give an exit ramp, to totally cripple the military. And I would prefer for him to be gone, right? He killed a friend of mine, so I'm not a fan, like at all. But you don't want nuclear Armageddon. Like President Biden said, he said Armageddon yesterday. His exact quote was, President Joe Biden says the risk of nuclear Armageddon is at the highest levels since 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, everyone points out the hypocrisy or change of mind here, because one of the people are often sending these tweets like where they contrast something someone said in the past to what they're saying right now. They point out the hypocrisy. And Joe Biden had tweeted in summer of 2020 when he was candidate Joe Biden, "You won't have to worry about my tweets when I'm president." So we got rid of the mean tweet guy, right? The mean tweet guy who made everyone feel uncomfortable, not even allowed on Twitter. But the new guy who warned us that we had nothing to worry about his tweets just casually says, we're pretty close to nuclear Armageddon, guys, by the way, nuclear Armageddon around the corner. So at least you don't have to worry about Trump's mean tweets. They're gone. Another one of those sort of defiant L's, they're often called, right? Defiant losses, comes from Eric Adams, where Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, says, we should protect our immigrants, period. Yes, New York City will remain a sanctuary city under an Adams administration. This was last October. So just before he was elected mayor. And this is from yesterday. Eric Adams declares a state of emergency over New York City's immigration crisis. We have not asked for this. There was never any agreement to take on the job of supporting thousands of asylum seekers. Well, I mean, sanctuary city is not just a fashion statement. It's not a fashion statement. It's a responsibility. So when he says, we did not take on the job of supporting thousands of asylum seekers, well, if you advertise as the largest city in the world that you are an asylum and an asylum city, don't be surprised if people come to seek asylum there. Sanctuary city should have meaning. I agree. I'm pro sanctuary city, as long as you understand what you're doing, as long as you understand that your local taxpayers have a bill to pay, that and they should even present it as, if you want to be a sanctuary city, here's your amount of the bill. I saw on Twitter yesterday as well a comment about how warmongering is never put in terms of financial bills. And someone was sharing a passage from a book written around World War I, World War II time between them. And it was exactly that. If everyone was, everyone who's out there saying we should go to war, we should smash these people, smash those people, sure, go ahead and say it. Maybe you're right, maybe. But one of the best ways we can handle that is to send everyone their portion of the bill. And then to say to them, go and pay your taxes, within the next few weeks for your contribution. And the argument would be that people wouldn't be so pro-war if they actually saw the bill. And I think that applies very obviously in this case, right? If everyone in New York City knew how much it costs for 1,000 asylum seekers, 2,000 asylum seekers, no one in the debate around immigration thinks. And I'm going to say this is where right-wing Republicans are brainwashing people as well, right? It's not immigration good, immigration bad. It has nothing to do with it. There's only one question. If anyone was speaking honestly to you in the media, on Fox News, on CNN, they would be saying this one question: how many immigrants? That's all that matters. We need immigrants. There's no doubt about it. There's just no doubt about it. It's a strength in America. I live right now in New England, where we haven't participated in America's immigration waves. Boston has, but the rest of the area hasn't. They call this the whitest area in America. And it's not a healthy place. There's a lot of super unhealthy people here. All the strong people already left to make Oregon and all these other places. What we have here is a lot like in Europe. It's who stayed, and then no one has come to backfill the loss of population. So there's a lot of great people around here, but the demographics are awful. And the demographics show you what a lot of countries have in store around here. When there's way too many old people, not enough people, the whole energy of a place changes. I think with COVID, this place is starting to fill up again, and I think more people are going to come. But as someone who spent their whole life basically around lots of immigrants, I know that immigrants are more American than Americans. Way more. They came for work and to not have corrupt governments. So luckily, I think what we see in Texas with all of the Latin immigration will actually elevate the conversation, right? Because if Republicans are going to court them as they're trying to, as we see they're starting to become successful, they're going to have to adapt the immigration language. Because right now, this thing where, build a wall and keep them out, and there's too many, Maybe there are too many. Or that we should only focus on legal immigration like Canada does. Canada. I used to laugh all the time when people were criticizing Trump's immigration plan. It's Canada's plan. Canada is really strict to get in. You have to have education. You've got to have 2 degrees, basically. And it's a point system. You get points for having done this, points for having done that, and then you get to come to Canada to work. That's all the system really should be. We don't have a big debate around immigration in Canada because of that. And we do talk about the number, how many. We make it 1% of the total population a year. And if we fall short, there's reasons. If you go above the amount, which almost never happens, you try to give reasons, right? There's a target. And usually the reasons why you can't hit the target are because of processing and efficiencies. It's all operational stuff. It's not political. It's not anyone's idea or orientation politically that would change that. And then they even key into the Canadian labor market because the jobs that get opened, so they have a list of jobs that are opened for immigrants, and those ones give you points as well in your system. If you come into the list of jobs that are in demand, you'll get sort of a head start and you'll be able to get in. So I worked very closely in immigration law for both. In Canada, we don't call them the Secretary of Immigration or Citizenship. They're called the Minister of, but I worked for the Secretary of Immigration and Citizenship for a while. So tons of visibility on this stuff. But anyway, the point is not that the point is not about immigration, good or bad. It's to show that this construct around immigration is fake. It's just to raise money and just to get you involved in the fake prison of 2 ideas, to get you involved in the back and forth of immigration is good, immigration is bad. It's nothing to do with it. It's just how much immigration. That's the only question we should ask. And that's what they didn't ask in New York. That's what they didn't ask in New York. How much immigration? I'm sure their capacity is huge. Find out what it is, what it costs. Now, I don't think they're ever going to send people bills for immigration, but nevertheless, it would help people understand the problem. That way, you can't go around virtue signaling. What I'm against is signaling for a city that they're for immigration. A bunch of people show up and then they're screwed. How are they going to get help? You can't do that. You can't do that. It's not going to work, right? So, but it all feeds into the theme today, which was inspired by our friend Kanye West, who we love, who we support for president. Kanye West 2024 all day long. And he did that speech on Tucker Carlson. I'll give a quick recap. He wore the White Lives Matter t-shirt at Paris Fashion Week, came back to America. Everything's blowing up. Some people are angry. Some people find it funny. Some people are so happy. Tucker Carlson goes to see the studio where all of this stuff is created in LA, and then they do an interview together, which aired over 2 parts. The first part was 2 days ago, where we came up with our 5-point Kanye West 2024 draft policy plan. Had to do with doing an event and a show on Jekyll Island where the US dollar was created, where we can re-sanctify it. It had to do with making royalty contracts canned, like Campbell's soup. So in the same way that food became canned off the shelves, we got to get rid of all this legal language that's there to confuse and obfuscate and all that, and really turn them into standardized contracts. In Quebec, we have standard leases for renting apartments, and you can buy them at any deli, any corner store, and those are the documents that everyone uses to get into apartments and all that. It makes it really simple. There's all kinds of standard contracts in Quebec that you can buy right in a store, and they work for all kinds of stuff. So Quebec's different because it's the Napoleonic Code system, so a lot of the stuff translates into standardized canned contracts very easily, still written in their ridiculous legal language and not simplified, and it's like signing the terms of agreement to an app or whatever. It's like 8 pages. No one reads it all, but you at least have a format that you can be confident in, and people use these standard contracts all the time in Quebec. So that's part of our plan for him. The next part would be a HODL tax incentive. So people who hold Bitcoin or other things for a long time get it tax-free. He's complaining a lot about how VCs and churn made a lot of problem. He gave a great example about how one of the Kushners owned more of Skims, the company that he created for Kim Kardashian to model her clothes and the snug fit. And in the end, the Kushner fella owned more than Kanye West. And he was like, what is going on in the world? How did this even happen? This is an internet business. We shouldn't have to be selling. We were already profitable. We shouldn't have to be selling ownership. So he's got a real problem with the sort of IQ level and the gap that creates where smart financial engineers can sort of suck the system dry. We talked a lot about energy policy and how if he deregulated nuclear, especially the small modular nuclear reactors of a future generation that have no possibility of meltdown. Saw an article yesterday about some kind of a salt mixture used instead of uranium, so that the fallout or waste would be a lot easier to manage. So another advancement in nuclear engineering that will no signs of seeing in commercial use anytime soon. So let's go, right? And then the last part, I think the most important part, would be to prove voluntarism works. Voluntarism being an important political philosophy inside of Bitcoin, that basically no more violence, no more men with guns compelling you to give money to some boondoggle project, but that we could prove we could build infrastructure, physical infrastructure, with our political habits being voluntarism. And the idea is, you had Eisenhower highway network being the sign of World War II being over, and this huge civil engineering project that went forth, hired a bunch of people, everyone involved. My idea would be to prove voluntarism works by making this whole network powered by collateralized Bitcoin, which is just given to the network with little tip jars everywhere. And so you give Bitcoin to the network, you collateralize it, and then you lend to people who want to build new parts of track, new parts of the network. Because the thing about a bike network and an e-bike network is you don't need standard tracks, right? It's not like a highway where everything has to be the same. You can actually have a gravel road, you could have a paved road, you could have crushed stone on a road. There's all kinds of iterations that work. It could just be a nice pine, it could be under a pine forest and the pine needles can fall in a nice way and make it silent and quiet and all that kind of stuff. So anything goes, basically. And we have the money to pay individual, it's not, sort of complicated labor. Anyone can sort of get involved in this. It's not high skilled. You don't have to go to school for millions of years to build a bike path or to refurbish a train track to be a bike path. So, but the point would be to model voluntarism, right? That would be the big point. But anyway, that was our 5-point plan for the interview yesterday. Here's what he said in the interview. That was our show yesterday in response to his interview 2 days ago. Second part of the video dropped last night, and he had some great quotes, and it got me to think of our theme today. And our theme today is all about what's required for coordinated persuasion versus uncoordinated persuasion. And the contrast here, and he pointed it out a few times, talking about basically the matrix, the narrative, talking about how influencers at schools, for example, in LA, take all the basketball player kids, all the movie star kids, and put them all in one place and try to influence them right away. And he gave an example that is a compromise he made with his wife about one of his kids, is that they would go to both schools and go to the school, that school that he's mentioning, as well as the school that Kanye West has started. And it was a choir school. So he would go to the normal school and then go to the choir school. And he says, a little kid. And he came in one day and he said to his dad, I don't even go to school here. Why do I have to listen? And he recounted the story. He goes, now imagine that attitude when you're 16, 26. And he talked a lot about fathers' ability to influence their children and how it might be lost through this kind of stuff. And what he does mention, though, and this is the theme of the story, and it made him chuckle, and it's the thing that makes him laugh and helps him move forward in this environment. And it's this. He mentioned all these influencers. He mentioned it in the first part of the show. He mentioned it in the second part of the show, all the influencers. He talked about a Black Lives Matters office manager, a Black Lives Matter office manager, which means that you hire token Black people to sort of blackwash your company, and you get this Black image. He even called Obama, who he talked about being friends with and respects and all that. He says the friendship is kind of diminished since Kanye came out as a Trump supporter or as someone who believed in a Trump presidency in 2016. But he says no matter what, we're still on a certain level that if I saw him, I would want to be friends with him, because there's only so many African-American people with their level of talent and ability, so they have to be friends. And I think that's a very great answer. But what he says is, if Obama saw me first, he probably wouldn't say hi. And he said he made a joke saying he had, but I don't think that's true. But here's the thing. This is the thing that makes him laugh and why it's important and why we're going to talk about the board and why we're going to tie it to the movie, to the story, the news stories of the day. So he says that the main tool of liberals are these artists and influencers to persuade people and to help keep them in a coordinated, they coordinate to keep this sort of mindset, right? They use the media, they use the influencers, they use institutions, and all of these things get together and sort of pump out the same message. And as long as the message is consistent, it's persuasive, really persuasive. What he says, and he goes a lot into God and channeling brilliant ideas through him, and gives all the ideas and things that he creates, mentions it's God who does it, and he channels it through himself. But what he says, and this is what he laughs and it tickles me, he says that all of these influencers and all of these folks are working for this coordinated approach between medicine, media, athletes, banking institutions, religion, to create dollars and perpetuate a worldview that creates dollars. And what he says is, and this is the chuckle, he goes, they get all of these guys, right? But God saw fit to give the best artist influencer to the other side, right? The best artist and the best influencer to the other side. Then he says, when I'm president, he says, eventually I'll be the president of the United States. In the interview, he says, eventually I'll be the president of the United States. And what we see now is, if I were president, I would have Elon at the office every day. He would sleep there. I would be calling him all the time. Meanwhile, the current White House spends all this time criticizing Tesla. I mean, when President Biden went to Detroit and talked about America's future in electric cars, he didn't even mention Tesla, didn't even mention them, just talked about what GE was doing, Ford was doing. So there's been an animosity between old car companies, connections to Biden, and Elon Musk and what he's doing. So he says, I would definitely be doing the same. He says that these media companies in this way are literally attacking America with these messages, and that with that attack, his ability to be the most influential, the most respected artist is enough to balance the equation, just one person. And I think that's right. I think that's right. And that brings me really to the story and the board and what we're talking about today. So in this coordinated attack, if every piece isn't in coordination, the perpetuation of the system becomes very difficult. Whereas, contrast that with Bitcoin, where we can have an uncoordinated attack. And within Bitcoin, it popularized a lot of cryptographic words, cryptographic tools. One of them is the Byzantine generals problem. So in the Byzantine generals problem, it's about knowing that one of your generals, you're doing a siege and you're storming a castle, but you have generals that are traitors. So it's sort of a magic trick, if you will, right? A lot of cryptography is like magic tricks often. And they look like it anyway. When you see the math, obviously they're not, but it's like a magic trick or a logic trick. And you perform this experiment or this protocol, this exercise, and you will get the result you need. And you'll know that you don't have to worry about one officer being on the other side. You'll still get the coordinated attack. You'll still be able to get the coordinated attack. The advantage Bitcoin has in all of this, and the advantage that Kanye alludes to in the interview yesterday, is that Bitcoin doesn't require any coordination. It doesn't require all these folks in the same way that Kanye can stand alone against all of those influencers in Hollywood and still say, I think I can win, right? One against many, I think I can win. That's what he's saying. One against many it's a fair fight. Maybe not even a fair fight, right? And what he's sort of alluding to is that if he just gets together with a few people like Elon Musk, like others, there's a possibility. His exact quote on the whole idea of this is that we have the information we need to have a utopia. but we are led by the most greedy and least noble people. Right? We have the information we need to have a utopia, but we're led by the most greedy and least noble people. Perfect. It's perfect. And the advantage that Bitcoiners have then is that none of this stuff has to actually be coordinated. They need to coordinate in order to win. It's much harder, right? Everyone's got to speak from the same point of view. And look at the kind of trouble you can get into. Look at the Hunter Biden laptop story. The Hunter Biden laptop, and this is from Kyle Becker. He tweeted this yesterday. The Hunter Biden laptop story is not only a scandal for its contents, but the way big tech censored the story, the U.S. intel law enforcement dismissed national security concerns, and mainstream media refused to report on it. It is the ultimate giveaway. The system is thoroughly corrupt. So what he's saying here is that the Hunter Biden laptop story required media, it required institutions, it required athletes, it required all kinds of spokespeople to all coordinate at one time. Very difficult. All it took was the New York Post and then a few others online to break it wide open. And now, because everyone needed to coordinate, the laptop story can become much greater than it ever would have been. Much greater. Although it's still great. We should have been asking those questions from day one. I mean, do we know if Ukraine has any information on those people? We don't know. We never even asked the question. Why are we doing all this stuff in Ukraine? Why is so much money going over there? I get why. Energy could have nothing to do with that family. But, and the more I look, the more I realize they've got all kinds of lithium in Donbass. They've got all kinds of minerals over there, right? We've been told from the beginning this was all about resources. It very well could be. Nevertheless, to get those resources, everyone's got to sing from the same book. Bitcoin, for us to proceed here, none of this has to be coordinated. We just need one person like Kanye, one person like Elon Musk, one person like me. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. Because in order for Bitcoin to progress here, right, just one good doctor, one good, thank God for Bitcoin as an event to coordinate Christians and give them a new source of information to get them out of this matrix. He called it the matrix a few times. This is what Kanye referred to as the matrix. This coordination to keep brains static. And that the advantage he sees is any one of these pieces breaking lets basically the orange light flow in and can help fix you. So Saturday morning here, so we're not going to go as long. Let me see where our chats are. Morning, guys. Morning. Let me get my cup too. Yeah, let me have another sip. It gets cold. I got to get one of those like coffee warming things because I take my first sip and then everything's, it's not great at the end. The fake prison of two ideas, Justin says. Yeah, the fake prison of two ideas, I stole it from Greg Gutfeld. If ever you want to get who created that, the attribution, it's from Greg Gutfeld, who now is, speaking of uncoordinated and all that, Greg Gutfeld's audience for his one night show is larger than all the other night shows combined already. And he just started a year ago, right? And he's got the best primetime show, primetime and night. He's got the two shows. I don't watch Fox or his show. Before 2016, I would watch The Five right when it started. I thought it was one of the better shows, and I still think it's one of the only news shows that if ever I saw it on or something like that, I would watch it. I think Kat Timpf, for example, is really funny. The wrestler guy they have on there is great. It's just a great cast, and they seem like they have a lot of fun, and that's all you need out of a TV show. So it's really fun. So he wrote that, and look at the effect he's had. All these not funny people leaving late night TV, like Trevor Noah and all the same joke. These are pure coordinated attack brains. I mean, they're doing nothing else for the system other than saying the same joke about the same people for 10 years now. It hasn't stopped. It's just the same joke. Oh, look at the dumb hillbillies. So really bad stuff. Justin says, US and NATO seem hell-bent on extreme brinkmanship. Looks like it, but once again, we have to be, if they get it right, then maybe they were right. You know, as an exercise, I think it's always good with Bitcoin and with a lot of things, just to ask, maybe you're wrong, right? Especially when it comes to war, because I get why people want Putin out of there for good. Now, none of it makes sense because the Russians they have everything going for them. Everything. I mean, they have everything going for them. Everything. Why they found themselves in this position, it's Putin, and I'm sure it is NATO and the United States, but it's got to come to a head at a certain point. So I still believe the Russian people have an immense contribution left to, I guess you can say, the Western world, but an immense contribution left for humanity. And I don't think it ends with them getting nuked into the ground here. So let's hope. Let's hope the country of Dostoevsky and all these guys continues, right? I watched the full thing yesterday. This is from Hoover. The interview was really good. Who'd have thought I'd ever called Tucker one of the last true journalists? He really is. And you know, we've talked about on the show. He actually he was forced to go with that Rachel Maddow. I forgot her name there, Rachel Maddow. So Rachel Maddow also used the Alex Jones defense. It's actually called the Rachel Maddow defense, by the way, to say that you're an entertainer, not a news person. It's actually called the Rachel Maddow defense. And I think Tucker used it, but, you know, basically, I think the same of him as Rachel Maddow. There is an entertainment factor there, except he's a little more, a lot more integrity there, a lot more integrity. Now, I don't know this, but people say, I'm not saying it, people say that NBC has super close ties with US intelligence agencies, and that Rachel Maddow she glows, right? That's what I've heard. So I've heard she glows, and which would make sense because of, I mean, just look how smart she is. Look at her degrees and look at her capacity, and you got to ask, how could she be so wrong and stupid about stuff? I mean, is she wrong and stupid? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think she's much smarter than that. So yeah, good. Everyone's watching Kanye. I watched it as well. I was impressed with what he had to say. He is clearly a creative genius. Yeah, he is. A big fan now. Good. I see he's back on Twitter now too. Seen 2 tweets this morning. First time in 2 years, I think. Yeah. I've been tweeting at him with my Bitcoin plan, so do that too. Maybe if he adopts our Bitcoin plan, we'll have some sway. I've been offering it to him for a while. And by the way, I'm trying to get him now for Bitcoin 2023. I found out we were close last year. I didn't realize we have a bunch of connections and all that stuff. So working on it. We'll see. Maybe we can get him to play a set at Sound Money. That would be a lot of fun. But I am going to produce the Jekyll Island event with him. We're going to go do that. It's going to be amazing. You know? All right, team. That's all I got for this morning. Take care. See you tomorrow.